as China is a large investor in the U.S. Treasury bond, and we're worried about inflation a lot. So do you think hyperinflation is likely in the U.S. sometimes later?
I think for the foreseeable future, the risks are more on the deflation side than on the inflation side. And eventually, if the United States does recover and the Federal Reserve has left all this excess liquidity in the system, then at some point you would begin to worry more about inflation. But I think if we're sitting here right now in a deep recession where the risks are tipping toward deflation and we're worried about inflation, we're worried about the wrong thing. Let's face it.
Okay. Right. Well, but for Treasury bond investors like the Chinese government, they are investing like for 5 years or 10 years time horizon. Then it's probably not that outrageous to think about possible inflation.
Let's step back for a second. I mean, are Chinese currency managers really worried about inflation in the buying of treasuries, or do they buy treasuries to maintain the currency policy, which is what China needs to maintain and sustain its export-led growth model? I would argue that the motives behind being overweight in U.S. treasuries have nothing to do with inflation concerns and have everything to do with the currency policy that China has judged to be essential to sustain its export-led growth dynamic. And as long as China wants export-led growth, it has to keep buying U.S. treasuries to keep its currency competitive.
The Chinese economy really is deteriorating. I mean, if you're looking at value-added industry, now it's only 5.4%. This is the first time since 1997 that we see growth like that. Do you have any views about why the economy is dropping just like a falling knife?
It's very clear. You compare the structure of the Chinese economy today with that which existed in 97, 98 during the Asian financial crisis. The export share today is more than double what it was back then. In fact, the export share of the Chinese economy has gone from 20 to 40% in the last 7 years alone. So here's China, who has really failed to develop the growth dynamic from internal private consumption. It has become more reliant on exports than ever before, and now we're in the biggest external demand shock that the world has faced since the end of World War II. We've never seen a period when the developed world, the United States, Europe, and Japan, all in recession at once. We've never seen that before. So China, more reliant on exports, facing the biggest external demand shock in the modern history of the world, why should it be so surprising that the export-led production in China is declining? Production, value-added production for exports in the month of November was down over 5% from its year earlier level, even though overall production was still up about 5.2%. So China's getting hit with a massive external demand shock.
Many people are talking about the need to change the model, but it looks really hard. What do you think what are the most critical things to begin in order to really transfer China's growth model to a more domestic-oriented one?
Look, it is hard to do, but this is what China's good at. China's good at doing hard things. I mean, 30 years ago, your economy was on the brink of total failure. And you opened up and you moved aggressively in embracing SOE and other types of reforms. This is hard to do. And so now it's hard, yes, it's hard to stimulate internal demand, but China, this is what makes China a great nation, is you do hard things. So what do you need to do? You have excess levels of precautionary saving because of massive SOE reform, and there's no safety net that gives workers confidence about future income prospects, either in terms of employment income or retirement income. So the things you need to do were identified very clearly by your government when it laid out the 11th five-year plan literally 3 years ago and said that we need to invest in Social Security. We need to build a pension system. We need nationwide medical and unemployment insurance retraining. That was there. If you do that, if you build the safety net, then people will save less and spend more. You didn't do it. Why didn't you build the safety net over the last 3 years? Those are key questions. I don't understand that. And that's, you know, I'm a huge enthusiast and optimist on the Chinese economy. This is a very big disappointment to me.
Right. I mean, action now seems like much more important than any other plan.